Foresight Wrestling Podcast on the one and only 411 Podcast Network.
This is Justin Watry. You are listening to the 411 Foresight Wrestling Podcast on the 411 Podcasting Network. This is going to be a one-on-one match this week. Mr. Steve, how you doing?
Hey, doing well, doing well. How are you this fine Friday?
I'm feeling pretty good. Went out, saw some Bone Thugs and Harmony at Summerfest.
Bone Thugs, nice. Did you wake up? It's the first of the month.
I called in early to work, so I'd like to not be waking up anytime soon. But we're going to discuss a few topics. Obviously, some big news this week in the wrestling world. There always is.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit.
What happened?
I don't know.
Gosh.
I know. There was something I mentioned last week. There's always content. There's always something to talk about.
That's true.
And then we get hit with that news, but we will get there in a few minutes. But first, we did have a pay-per-view on Sunday. Do you even remember it?
It was on like a 5-inch screen, so I kind of remember it, but all my memories are very small.
Yes, you watched on your phone again, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I'm going to California because my good buddy is getting married. Shout out to the Yeti, Chris Book.
Congrats. Well, that's too bad you have to watch it on your phone, though.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Speaking of it is what it is, the usual Cruiserweight Championship match was on the kickoff show.
The kickoff, yeah.
That's just kind of I expected at this point. But we have a new champion. Drew Gulak defeated Tony Nese and Akira Tozawa. What do you think?
Well deserved. I think Drew Gulak's time I think he's put in the work, and I think it's time for him to get recognized. I remember watching the Cruiserweight Classic, and that guy just had some amazing grappling holds. He's an amazing grappler.
Yeah, he also did a few things in NXT, which was cool. So maybe that was kind of getting him ready for this.
It was kind of cool that he did that no-fly thing too, because the cruiserweights, because they're lighter, they're they get kind of pigeonholed into always having to do aerial battles. So it's kind of nice when you got a guy that's like, no, let's get grounded.
Yeah, him and Tony Nese, I think, are kind of beyond the pigeonhole where you could see him doing more. And
absolutely.
Even Cedric Alexander, this week became a champion on WWE Raw. Sure, it was 24/7 champion and lasted 30 seconds, but, there is more out there for these guys. But we mentioned last week, Drew Gulak was the one with the momentum, so if there was going to be anything, he was going to do it. So it's kind of like everybody does kind of get a turn on 205 Live, and I guess it's his turn.
I mean, they're trying. They're trying new things. They're trying to get that brand a little more exposure.
A little bit
more. Yeah.
So that's fine with me. I have no problem with that. A little title change, and, Tony Nese was not pinned, so if they want to go back to that one-on-one, then he can have a legitimate gripe that he never lost.
Right.
So, as announced, we started the show with Becky Lynch defeating
Lacey Evans.
Again, clean.
Yeah.
So, no controversy.
Also well-deserved.
Well-deserved, and it was actually submission, and I thought at the time the feud was over, didn't you?
You kind of hoped it was.
I mean, another clean victory.
Right, another clean victory, and I understand when they want to have these prolonged stories, but the story was kind of over for me after the first match because she's brand new, she kind of forced her way into the title picture when she lost clean. Get back to the end of the line.
Yep. I thought it's that time, but we'll get to that in a little bit about where these two are headed. So good match to start, and a little foreshadowing of maybe there was more to come. But up next, we had Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn defeating Big E and Xavier Woods. It was just an 11-minute tag match. I never really thought much of it. There
wasn't
was nothing
too invested either. I mean,
no, there's nothing on the line.
I'd kind of hoped that there might have been some cool stuff like that, but it really was just kind of a... the same stuff we see from Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, and same stuff we see from New Day, and throw them together.
Just felt like, time killing, and let's just throw them on the card for a little filler.
Right.
And, what made it even worse is that, it led to absolutely nothing except for the millionth week in a row, Sami Zayn taking a loss on TV.
Again.
So, and Owens didn't even, it didn't lead to anything. He didn't even beat, I thought he was going to beat Big E and Xavier and then say, Kofi, you're next.
Right.
And then they kind of did that on SmackDown, and then he didn't do anything. So then, so it led to nothing. So whatever.
Where are we going?
Where are we going? So despite what Holly
and how
claimed,
do we get there from here?
And how do we get there from here now? All right. So despite what Holly said, Samoa Joe did not make quick work of Ricochet.
Oh.
Sorry, Holly. We have a new United States champion.
That was awesome.
Ricochet.
I mean, that was like we called it last week. I do believe that was match of the night. It was definitely the one I was most excited to see.
I thought it was great, and as great as the match was, as great as the finish was, the post-match I thought was very nice with everyone backstage, and then they saved it for Papa H, giving him a little hug.
Yeah, right. That was cool to see the the bridge of NXT to the main roster. And
right, and it's something I think that, there's a lot of momentum. There's a lot of, they can do a lot with the story of this guy came from NXT.
Yeah.
And sometimes, it's completely ignored, and sometimes you see it here, and it really is cool that, fans, despite his independent past, you know, we've seen him from NXT now and get called up and do this. So.
And he was a huge name coming into NXT.
Right, exactly. So I thought that was very cool. Like you said, probably match of the night. And Samoa Joe wasn't losing to move down the card. He was moving
up. Yeah.
He was moving up.
Do you ever notice that, like, when the wrestlers come in with a name behind them, the bigger the name they are, the more likely it is that they keep their independent name? Yeah, they don't go through as many name changes if they come in with momentum.
It's really weird how that works sometimes, and then you see right now even some new crop in NXT are all getting new names, and it's all completely changing.
I mean, even Kevin Owens got a name change when he got into NXT, and he was like a big star coming in there too.
Yeah, or even Sami Zayn, obviously.
Yeah, they made him.
What was it? I think was it his favorite? I think he named his son Owen or something for Owen Hart.
That's right.
That's how it worked.
So so now he took it as the last name for tribute.
And even speaking of that, our next match was, Daniel Bryan, obviously Bryan Danielson. So
right, yeah, right.
Easy fix there. Daniel Bryan and Rowan defeated Heavy Machinery. I think we kind of expected that. This match.
That was a nice segue.
Yeah, it was a little bit.
Fantastic.
Nice foresight you got there.
Oh.
So I would say this 14 minutes, it was probably longer than I thought. But the live crowd in Tacoma, the fans that were there, certainly enjoyed Heavy Machinery.
Yeah, well, they did, sort of. It was weird coming out because, here's Heavy Machinery supposed to be in the face tag team. And, they get this main reaction, but then Daniel Bryan comes out, and wow.
Yep, Daniel Bryan, obviously, Washington. That was cool. And I like how they kind of played into that. Even on the TV shows after the pay-per-view, it certainly played into the fact that he was from Washington. Despite, again, what Holly thought, she picked Heavy Machinery, and we had a little bet while watching. So, yeah, a little payoff there. But Daniel Bryan and Rowan retaining, I thought it was kind of a gimme, didn't you think so?
I thought that was what was going to happen, too. I didn't see them losing the titles just yet.
No, and
not to Heavy Machinery yet.
No, and even going forward, I don't even really see them losing them for a while.
No, I think that they're in a position where they can really revitalize the tag team division, and I think they're going to try and do that. I don't know how well it's going to work or how much leeway they're going to have, but
it's something, though.
Excuse me.
I think it's something, and if Daniel Bryan leading the charge, whatever that something is, it'll be good.
Right, because Daniel Bryan can take anything and turn it to gold.
Speaking of gold, our next match was for the women's...
Wow, you did it again.
I did it again. What did I do?
You just segue real nice like that.
Oh, well, whatever. So SmackDown Women's Championship, the wild card rule is in effect here. So Alexa Bliss coming from Raw with Nikki Cross, unfortunately lost to Bayley.
Which we also kind of assume because here we go with the different shows again. Like, This are they doing a brand split or are they not? They need to figure that out and then decide who's going to fight who.
I don't know. I have this written in my notes to talk about later, but we can screw it and just talk about it now. What's going on with the wild card rule?
I'm just completely flummoxed. Like, I get like you want to spice it up and have different things, but if you're going to do that, then, open borders and let everybody go on any show that they want. And if you're not going to do it, then straight up Raw, SmackDown. Like, each one has a champion, or maybe there's like one. I would like to see like a champion of both brands type thing.
Yeah, the problem with that is it'd go to Brock Lesnar again. And we don't discuss that. So, I mean, I don't know what's going on. I mean, we even just talked about it a little bit with, Samoa Joe. I mean, he lost the U.S. title on Raw.
Right.
Didn't seem to care one bit. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, hey, now he's going for the SmackDown WWE Championship with Kofi Kingston.
Right.
So where did that come from? And then Alexa Bliss, and then even again on...
And is that another foregone conclusion? Because, Samoa Joe is on Raw, so is it less likely that he's going to win that title? I mean, to me it is. I already kind of know how that's going to go.
Yeah, I would say it's less likely, but I also, have kind of assumed Kofi will hold it for a little while anyways. So
until Shane McMahon gets his hands on him.
Well, no, not necessarily. Brock Lesnar may also be soon. But anyways, we'll get to that in a few months. I think they just kind of need to decide, like even the wild card rule. Like I defended it by saying, oh, that's kind of cool. You never know which 4 are going to show up. And it'd be kind of cool of who does what.
But now it's like 5 or 7.
5 or 7. I think it was like roster. 6 in the opening segment already topped the 4. And it was
how about next week? They just take the SmackDown roster and put them on Raw. And nobody from Raw is on Raw. And then they take the Raw roster and put them on SmackDown, and nobody from SmackDown is on SmackDown.
Tuesday Night Raw.
Right?
I think
no, it's still called SmackDown. They just use the Raw wrestlers.
I think they didn't like the Raw roster once get like caught in a storm, and then the SmackDown guys like showed up Monday night or something like that. Oh
yeah, it was either a storm or I remember there was a volcano in Iceland that blocked a bunch of flights.
I remember on Raw we got a random Undertaker versus Jack Swagger match.
I remember
everyone was caught overseas or wherever they were.
I think that was the volcano in Iceland. Like it had spewed a whole bunch of ash into the atmosphere and they couldn't fly out. So, like, John Cena was already in the States because he didn't go on that tour.
Oh,
and they had Taker. Swagger was already back or something like that. They had a whole bunch of people that hadn't gone over, and they're like, we're going to use you now, so go.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I just assume, Fox and USA, they want all the stars. And we talked about this a few months ago, the Superstar Shakeup. Like, how do you manage each show? And obviously, I mean, I think it was Roman Reigns was on Raw, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and he wasn't even on his own show, SmackDown. And that was... The big news was Reigns going to SmackDown, and well, obviously, that didn't really happen. Yeah. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know. Do you just end it and just say whatever?
Just let him go, right? I mean, it's so weird.
It's so weird. I mean, but the problem with that is then there are way too many titles.
Right.
I never really got that argument because if there's 2 separate shows, then you do need double the titles. But if it is a free-for-all, well, then there's so many titles.
Right, and they're just flying around willy-nilly.
Yeah, they're just certainly flying around
willy-nilly. Throw a stone and catch a title.
Speaking of catching a title.
Nice.
All right, that one was pretty bad. But
he's stretching, but he's trying.
Stretching. Bayley retains. We learned a few days later Alexa Bliss will be getting a title match at Extreme Rules. So
thanks to Nikki Cross.
Cross, she she's still with Bliss. We got that little news at Stomping Grounds that she believed everything she said and actually tried to help, and then Bayley came back. And I don't know. This time, I don't know. There might be a title change this time.
You think? I mean,
I don't know. I was going to mention Sasha Banks, but I don't know if we're there quite yet. But I do at this point think Banks will be back.
Yeah. All signs kind of point that way. She's been doing stuff with the company. She's been kind of slowly keeping her commitments or coming back in some fashion. So she's definitely going to return in some fashion.
Yeah, she may have just needed to recharge her batteries or something. And
I know that feeling.
That is true. I would I don't know. The only reason I wouldn't say Bliss because maybe at this point Nikki Cross realizes, what's going on. And the pay-per-view is July 14th.
Right.
So it's already in 16 days?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's kind of a couple rematches already set and not a whole lot going on, but again, after that, then there's a full month till SummerSlam. Then I think we'll finally actually get some new matches.
Right. And it could also be a setup to put Nikki Cross in that position as well.
Hey, anything that gets Nikki Cross more TV time is fine by me.
You heard it first.
You heard it first.
He supports Nikki Cross, so anything that Justin Watry supports, we all have to keep an eye on.
Speaking of supporting Roman Reigns,
wow, that was a stretch.
That was a big stretch. Roman Reigns defeats Drew McIntyre, 17 minutes, kind of long.
It was kind of a long match. It was kind of a same old kind of two big burly guys just beating the crap out of each other.
Yeah, they had some matches on TV, and obviously everyone remember the WrestleMania match. And I don't think they've ever quite hit the potential that they're capable of.
No, definitely not. But I don't know if they've been given that opportunity. It seems like they've been kind of stifled.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of feels like it's still the Shane McMahon story.
Right, exactly. And that's where I start to kind of lose interest. I was all excited to watch Raw. And then I flipped it on, and it was, they told us that they were rehashing the Baron Corbin Seth Rollins match, and I was like, well, I'm gonna go play guitar then. It's like every time I get super interested in it, either Shane or Baron Corbin come in, and it's like I don't even wanna.
No, I don't think this feud can last too much longer.
I even think the guy that runs this one dirt sheet that I read every now and then, he was like 2 much Shane McMahon. It's like when even the insiders are just like, dude, we're done with this. I mean, we get it's a story, but come on.
Hey, it was the first pay-per-view of the year without a Shane match.
Yeah, but he was still there.
And he's right back on the next one.
Right back on the next one.
So either way, Reigns lost to Shane, yet could beat Drew. So whatever that means in the grand scheme of things, he lost to Shane at Super Showdown, and then, hey, now he can beat Drew. So I guess that means Shane is better than Drew.
Is that it? Because, I guess he's the best in the world.
Oh, that's true. He is the best in the world. But I don't know about that. But anyways.
Nobody does.
Nobody does. Kofi Kingston is still your WWE champion.
Woohoo!
Good news there for you.
Yeah, I was a little nervous there.
20 minutes. I wasn't at all.
I know.
20 minutes over Dolph Ziggler in a very cool ending.
I thought the match was great, to be honest.
I thought it was a very cool ending. The dive over, something Kofi would do.
Right.
And if you actually go on replay, you may have had a little wardrobe malfunction with his trunks kind of showing a little too much Kofi there. But anyways, everyone can go back now.
PG show.
PG show. Kofi retaining, I don't think much of a question.
No, it was definitely. Because it was supposed to be he was kind of filming in, so they just had to finalize the story and get him out of there. Yeah,
Dolph was just kind of in here, unfortunately, kind of to take the losses. But I will say 2 praises and then 1 negative, unfortunately. I will say the praise was obviously for the finish. Pretty innovative. I'm trying to think of a cage match ending like that.
Right.
I know NXT just kind of had one with Baszler and Io Shirai, which big news on that also. And I will also praise the promo package before the match. I thought it was really good.
Right, yeah.
And I don't know. I've been digging the whole Dolph saying it should have been me.
That is a good thing that he's playing up. I wonder how long this is going to go on.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's over. I'm going to say it's over, but it made sense for what they were trying to quick fill in.
Exactly.
Like, why is Dolph coming back? Like,
why should we care? And Dolph told you why you should care.
Exactly. It should have been him. He sat on the sidelines and saw somebody pretty much take what he had earned throughout his career. So,
and he's been going and going and going, has never held that particular title, and every time he seems to be getting a little momentum behind him, he falls off for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I'm kind of afraid he's going to fall off again.
I
would say he could maybe go for the Intercontinental, but against Finn Balor.
Maybe he's got a comedy date coming up.
He must have something. But anyways, Finn Balor... Nikki. Finn Balor seems to be facing Nakamura, which is...
I saw that little tease on the internet.
Which I guess if the Rusev pairing is done for Nakamura, give us more Balor versus Nakamura. They had a great match in NXT, which was Balor's send-off, if you remember that.
Yep.
And
that was because he faced the Icon. If I want to be the best, I have to face the Icon.
And then Nakamura took that and went for the NXT title
and killed it.
Yep. So I would trying to find a spot for Ziggler in my head, but I actually thought Balor versus Andrade was on this pay-per-view, and then it wasn't. I even went to the website. I'm like, where is it? And then also the main event was starting. I'm like, what the heck? So maybe I guess Andrade with his personal stuff. So,
right. Maybe they just quietly said, take this now and off.
Yeah. I mean, it'd probably be another loss anyway. So now for my 1 negative about the cage match. I thought the same with Kofi versus Kevin Owens.
Yeah.
I thought the same with Kofi and Dolph's previous match.
You're sick of the pancakes.
And I thought the same now about Kofi, Dolph in the cage. No, not the pancakes, but yes. But I don't know. It just doesn't ever seem like it's for the WWE Championship. It's still not, it's not getting the main event spot, which makes sense. And I don't know, Kofi and Dolph isn't still like screaming like main event headlining. And I felt the same with Kofi and Owens. It just never felt big. So, I mean, I know you don't necessarily want Kofi Brock, but to me, that would feel big. That would be an underdog story. That would be big. That would be, oh my gosh, can Kofi overcome it? Which I would give him a pretty good shot, actually, in making that story even bigger. Or even
better. I'm tuning out.
Or Kofi, Daniel Bryan. That would feel big to me. I think,
true.
And now Kofi Joe, I mean, that's not going to main event Extreme Rules.
It could. You never know.
It could, but
depends on who's feeling squirrely that day.
Well, they better be feeling squirrely here because they're nuts if they think that.
Wow.
They're nuts if they think Kofi doesn't. He needs just different challengers.
Yeah.
Something, it just feels too paint by the numbers. I don't know if that's the right term for it, but it's still not feeling. Kofi had the big WrestleMania moment, and then since then he's just been facing, like whoever each few weeks. Like,
right.
Like here's Dolph, and here's Owens, who has no chance,
right.
and hey, Sami Zayn can get pinned again. So I'm hoping Kofi does more. The Samoa Joe thing's a step in the right direction. But like you said, he's technically Raw, so
right.
is this now just a Extreme Rules feud to end it and then move on for SummerSlam?
Like a space filler or something?
Yeah, again. So it just felt like 2 months of space fillers, honestly.
Maybe they're doing that while they get their new writing teams in place.
Oh, boy. We will comment on next. Well, next is our main event. The big headlining main event of Seth Rollins versus Baron Corbin.
Yeah, what a garbage guy that was.
So
it's just been done. It's just been done so many times.
Well, here's where we're going to differ. You enjoyed the pay-per-view, but not the main event.
Overall, I enjoyed the pay-per-view, yeah.
Yeah, I actually, felt the opposite. I didn't care too much for the pay-per-view. I said that in the build-up when we did it before the preview. I didn't necessarily care for most of these matches, even though I assumed they'd be pretty good. But the main event I thought was intriguing, especially with the special guest referee.
That did add a little more intrigue to it, but then again, it was, maybe it's just my cynical nature, but like once she came out, the storyline became predictable. You knew she was going to do slow counts for Seth, fast counts for Rollins. When there was something going on the outside, she was going to do something to make it, it was, you knew what was going to happen the minute she walked out.
All right, I will defend that in two ways. One, I will say, Baron Corbin was picking.
Right.
No matter who he picked, you knew that was coming. The past 3 weeks, you knew that was coming.
It totally made sense of who we picked.
And I will also say predictable is not always bad. Kofi overcoming Daniel Bryan and getting his WrestleMania moment. That was predictable.
Right.
We knew in the 2 months build when Vince kept screwing him, he was going to get the match and win the title. Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30, of course he was going to overcome the odds. You could even say Rollins wins the Rumble, beats Brock. All that's predictable, but it's good.
But it was good, right? But I don't know. It's just like...
So I understand that part. And before the match, during the entrances, Holly, shout out to her, take a shot. She actually put her phone down.
Oh, really?
For her to put her phone down during a match is kind of a big deal. And she legit was like, I'm interested. I want to know who the referee is. And for me, too, this was my big hook, actually, of the entire pay-per-view. Who was the referee? We were running down everybody.
Right.
She thought Lashley. I don't know why, but she thought Lashley. I thought it'd be Bray. And you can call me a liar all you want, but during the entrances, we thought, hey, Lacey. And with Rollins had the chair, it was like he can't hit a girl.
Yeah.
So, and
I thought it was a really good choice. I thought it was a really good story that they were telling.
I thought it was really cool. So we were actually thinking Charlotte, who is Becky's, Charlotte had been kind of away.
Big nemesis.
Like, oh, he's not going to hit Charlotte. And then Charlotte would be like back from the dead to, kind of mess with Becky and get back at her man. And then sure enough, he introduced Lacey and it was like, oh, here we go. And it meant, first of all, that their feuds would continue, which, I don't think we needed anymore.
Right.
But it also meant a whole lot of fun and a Becky Lynch run. And right away, the crowd started chanting Becky.
Right.
And I wrote about this in my review column, 411mania.com. Holly, again, take a shot. She was into this thing.
People are getting alcohol poisoned.
Aren't we all? She was screaming when Lacey went 1, 2, and then said, "Oh, my arm! Yeah, my arm hurts." She screamed at the TV. She's faking it. She's faking it. No.
What have you done to that poor girl, my friend?
She was 1,000% into it. I was loving it. Do
you just sit back and watch her get all excited?
I do. I tell her half the time. I'm watching her more than the actual matches. She's just screaming, saying, "Come on, Becky, where are you?"
Wow.
And just into it 100%. So fun to watch always. And, Becky came out, cleaned house, did her thing. And, of course, Holly was loving it. I was loving it. I was like, here we go. This was great.
Yeah.
And I actually thought it had been cool if Becky ran in. Because if you remember how Becky versus Lacey ended, do you remember how it ended?
She tapped, didn't she?
Becky put her in it, immediately tapped.
Yeah, immediately tapped.
In like a split second.
Yeah.
I thought it would have been great if Lacey, hits the finisher, Corbin pins Rollins, and then Lacey gets down to pin, but Becky runs out, crowd goes nuts, and then she
puts her in the finish.
She puts her in her submission, and then Lacey taps, but it's a 3 count.
How about that?
1, 2, 3. And what would have happened then?
Well, I don't think they're going to put the title on Corbin. So
Right. And then technically, Becky would have cost Rollins the title. But, that's all for, fantasy.
Hey,
booking.
WWE, do you need a writer? I know a guy.
I don't know a guy. But anyways, I thought that would have been great. But either way, obviously that was not what was going to happen. But Becky came out.
That's a good story, though. That's a really good story.
That would have been nuts.
I'd actually watch that.
People would have freaked out if that would have happened. But it would have made sense, again, with the quick tap
Think
out.
of the headlines they could have had after that, Like, Baron Corbin shocks the world. Becky costs Seth the title. I mean, this is like gold right here,
If
dude.
Jinder Mahal can win the title.
Right?
And lose to Mojo Rawley
we need to start a wrestling company. Oh, wait, we did that.
But here's the... that is true. But here is the
Speaking of which, your brother still owes me for setting him up. Yeah.
Yeah, did I tell you he gave me a birthday card? Did I tell you what was on the back of the card?
What?
He wrote, "New Moon will return."
Oh!
Yeah, so anyways, we can discuss that a different time. But I thought it was a great ending. I actually enjoyed the 18-minute main event. Yeah, you knew the heel referee. We've seen it a million times.
Right.
They screw with the face, and then obviously they overcome the odds. We've seen it with Stone Cold and Vince, and you could go through a million different examples. I know you thought it was boring and predictable, and I'm guessing the live crowd did also in Tacoma.
Yeah.
But you know what? If you get the payoff in the end, it's worth it to me. So we sat through, and the crowd went nuts for Becky Lynch. So mission accomplished.
Yeah, good point. I mean, it was a good story to tell. I kind of knew what was going to happen. I mean, I guess I think hindsight being 2020, I did actually somewhat enjoy the main event just because I was waiting for these heel tactics to come up.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to say the one downside is, the feuds will continue. So at Extreme Rules, it is going to be that mixed tag match. It's going to be Becky and Seth versus Lacey and Baron Corbin. And as you can probably predict, it's winner take all. Both titles are on the line.
Right.
So I don't think it's been Extreme Rules gimmick yet, but I'm guessing it'll be no rules just to kind of wrap up the stories and, move on. And that's part of the deal, too. If they lose, they never get a shot again.
Yeah, that should be part of it.
And, they're not going to. Seth will retain. Becky will retain. I don't know if they're going to pin him at the same time or what they're going to do. But I think this is going to be the definitive, clean, no ifs, ands, or buts. No nothing. No more rematches.
Yeah.
Nothing even
Let's
the
be
next
done
night.
with this.
It'll be done, and then we can move on to SummerSlam, who, honestly, I don't know. Do you have anyone?
Baron Corbin can go and wait tables.
Right, I hear they're hiring down the street, but
Applebee's.
I don't know. Do you have anything in mind for Rollins coming up? I know everything thinks Brock is still
I mean, I guess if we got to do it, might as well get it done and over with that jerk. I mean, that guy.
Brock. By the way, you said earlier off air that Brock Lesnar is not a wrestler.
Yeah, I don't even consider him I consider him a waste of space. He's just, when you got something in your house that's just kind of been there forever.
Me?
And it's just kind of sitting there, and it doesn't really do much, but you can't get rid of it.
Me?
I mean, you're not in my house, but now you are. But
well, not that you know of. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's kind of like those junk drawers.
Yeah, exactly. He's a junk drawer. Brock Lesnar is a junk drawer. I love it. I'm gonna go with it.
Which actually, shout out to my brother, wrote a great article about junk drawers. If you have a junk drawer, everybody, clean it out.
I have several,
and there is a huge meaning behind it. There is a big meaning behind it. If you look at his, he wrote a column about it. So it's
that
about
was his entrance theme.
Right, there you go. Actually, that was.
Yeah, totally was.
Good call on that. I think there's more meaning behind it, but I wouldn't call Brock a junk drawer.
I would.
Okay.
Absolutely would.
So you think him and Rollins is coming up?
It's gonna happen. I mean, that's the only reason why he's there, right? To keep him in the title
picture. As a briefcase. I'm still thinking something with the Fox SmackDown, though. I mean, if you have Brock, I know you don't like him, but you got to promote him front and center.
I mean, I guess he's a draw for some people. He does pull in money. Otherwise, they wouldn't be paying him the money that they're paying him. So, I mean, you don't get to that type of contract without, showing something for it. So as much as I dislike the guy and just can't stand him, apparently he pulls in money. Not my money, but he pulls in money.
Not your money. But even now, if Heyman is getting more of a role, which we'll talk about in a little bit, I mean, obviously Brock, and then you could even say foreshadowing. You could even say, Ronda Rousey, if either of them are going to be coming back anytime soon, even for SummerSlam or for the big Fox SmackDown premiere. So we're going to kind of move on right now. Just a quick thing on Raw. What What do you think about the Undertaker returning?
I thought it was great. I mean, I kind of thought it was like a ratings ploy because we've been hearing for weeks that they got these historically low ratings. So I kind of thought that when it gets bad, who do you call? But
not Ghostbusters.
Well, sure. That's when you got we
actually, you know what? Ghostbusters on Raw would be pretty sweet.
That would be cool. Like, now are we talking new Ghostbusters or old Ghostbusters?
Oh, we're talking the classics.
Yes,
of course.
But rest in peace, Egon.
Oh, absolutely. Oh. So I would say Ghostbusters on Raw. That's ratings.
Hey, there you go. But no, I liked that Taker was there. It was nice to see him after the kind of tainted, I don't know if you want to call it a debacle or whatnot, of the Super Showdown. So it was nice to it kind of restored his, like you said, bad taste in the mouth type thing.
Yeah, it kind of washed the bad taste off his mouth. And, everybody's kind of going back and forth on why he's back or for what exactly. Is it leading to a SummerSlam showdown with Drew, or is it just him and Shane kind of being buddies wanting to have another match after their cell
Does
match?
Taker really need a reason to come back? I mean, whenever he comes back, it's always a good thing.
Yeah, and even, he could always renew the thing with Roman Reigns. I was at the Mania. That was the main event. So, I mean, there's 3 guys right there. You could do anything with any of them, and I think it would be big for SummerSlam, and coming off something with Goldberg, which I thought the match was better than it should have been. Obviously not the ending.
Yeah.
But I'm fine with him being back. I wrote a column about it, 411mania.com. I wrote about it, I think, 2 or 3 days ago. Cheap plug. And I kind of ended it by saying, regardless of why he's back, all you have to do ever is just, watch the fans.
Right, exactly. Everybody freaks out when that gong hits.
And it's the whole, you listen to the audience. I know we've heard it's kind of a cliche at this point, but listen to the audience. So, no, nobody's sick of The Undertaker in 2019. I know that's kind of a thing of, just retire. Nobody wants you here. No.
Not with Taker.
No, every time the gong hits, they go nuts.
And let's also not forget that Undertaker has transcended wrestling in itself. I mean, if he shows up at a baseball stadium and that gong goes off, the stadium goes nuts. He shows up, I remember back in the day, Regis and Kathy Lee, that gong goes off and you knew that there was something ominous coming. Like, he's just,
I remember he's on Jimmy presence. Fallon and Tombstone Thanksgiving turkey or something.
It was, oh yeah, that's right.
Brad Maddox.
Dressed up. Yep. Brad Maddox. Okay, next.
Poor Brad Maddox. By the way, I suppose I can mention this now. I remember I posted the video. It was Jimmy Fallon. Oh. He was doing, I think, like emails or requests or something. Yeah. And one of them was like...
Oh, yeah. It was like, send us something that you want to happen.
Or something. Yeah. And it was like, can Undertaker
tombstone a turkey?
And then he's just like, no, absolutely not. And then he moved on, and then the gong hit, and Jimmy made this weird face, and then, of course, this turkey came strutting on. Like, this poor turkey was just going to get slaughtered. And then... Undertaker tombstone. But anyways, I remember posting the video, and it was Jimmy Fallon, the turkey, which was Brad Maddox, and the Undertaker. And I remember posting a video and saying, just think, one of these 3 has agreed to do an interview with me. And,
Brad Maddox.
I mean, obviously. I mean, it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out which of the 3, but, it left that little mystery of, who could it be?
There was no mystery.
And then he backed.
Sorry, Brody. You're my good friend, but I didn't think you were getting an interview with The Undertaker, and I didn't think Jimmy Fallon even knows your name.
No, I don't think Undertaker does many interviews regardless. But anyways, so it was that little cryptic thing. Of course, you obviously knew it was Maddox, but and then a week later he backed out of it. So I actually never.
I wonder why.
I never got that. I believe that was, I think, right after he was released or before.
Yeah.
Either way.
What?
Yeah. I think Paige made him famous a little later on.
A little bit.
A little bit. So I'm happy Undertaker's back. It's him and Reigns versus Shane and Drew. Do you have a pick in this match early? It's 2 weeks.
I mean, obviously, because Taker's in it, I'm always going to side with Taker in these types of matches. It's just almost a foregone. He's a legend.
Yeah, I'm going to assume Reigns gets a little bit more revenge.
Yeah.
And those 2 win. I would say by pinning Shane, because I don't like Drew getting, another loss on him.
I think that would probably be the best way to go if they're listening. Shane is the fall guy. Shane is the whipping boy. Shane is the scapegoat. Beat him, get him off TV.
My only problem with that is, Shane has been built up, whether you like it or not, that it does feel like, somebody like The Miz should finally be the one to shut him up, not just Taker pins him in a tag match.
I mean, it might take that kind of force of the Phenom to shut him up.
Yeah, I mean, he's not the best in the world when Undertaker's around. It's certainly not his yard.
He's not the best in the underworld.
Oh boy. So I'm gonna say I think with you. Undertaker and Reigns can win this one.
Right.
But what does it lead to SummerSlam? I think that is then where Undertaker, can take a loss. And now him beating Goldberg makes more sense.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
If this was planned as reported before the Goldberg match, it now makes sense where Undertaker would win to kind of build him up. And then he comes back for this, probably a win. And then, you know what? He can lose to, say, Drew McIntyre at SummerSlam.
Yeah.
Or, I assume not, Shane McMahon.
Hopefully not.
But Undertaker now can be set up for another big SummerSlam showdown. And
that'll sell tickets,
Yeah, I think, the event's already sold out in Toronto, I think.
Oh, really?
First day when it last year went on sale. I think NXT too. But anyways.
But they can't fill the seats for Raw.
SummerSlam is in Toronto, a little different.
Good point.
So... I would say Undertaker and Reigns win, and then I'd be fine with Drew getting that huge win. If Undertaker wants to work with Drew, it makes sense that he's the one who beats him. But either way, I'm fine with Undertaker coming back. I really don't care why.
Yeah,
it's all good.
It's always good when Taker's around.
It's always good when he's back. And again, there's nothing like the gong hitting and then everyone freaking out. Michael Cole screaming, the Phenom. And Shane, of course, looking scared out of his mind up on top rope, like, now what do I do? And
right.
He just jumps into a chokeslam.
One of the highlights of my life was when we went to that Raw back in 2008. It was a WrestleMania Rewind.
March.
And you and I got to see for the very first time. I was floor level. I was probably about, I want to say maybe 10 rows behind Jim Ross doing commentary. This is when the commentary was on the floor by the ring.
Oh, yes.
And one of the highlights was I finally got to see a full-on Undertaker entrance with the fire, the smoke, the purple, the lightning, all of it. That was, when Michael Cole says it's a bone-chilling entrance, he is not lying. Like, I'm not a big fan of Michael Cole, but he was not exaggerating in that moment.
Yeah, probably the best entrance. And I think he, did he beat Mark Henry in a casket
match? Mark Henry in a casket match.
Yeah, yep. 2006 WrestleMania 22 flashback there. That's actually a good one of like top entrances, but
oh man,
you'd have to assume he's at the top.
Hey, maybe that's a topic.
Well, there you go.
Top entrances.
Did we give away our number one already?
We did, but like I said, it's Taker, so it's always a good thing.
Undertaker's at the top of like almost every list.
We'll just do 40 through 2. We don't even have to mention one because it's
40. Well, last week we did 50 reasons.
See, we can pile them in.
Yeah, and even Ric Flair again said it, and somebody else said it, that he would be on the Mount Rushmore.
Oh, absolutely. Taker's. I think Taker ascends the Mount Rushmore.
Okay, that was a topic my brother and Mr. Matty Moses did a few months ago for this podcast, and I mentioned him as an honorable mention. Mm-hmm. None of us had Undertaker on, obviously, the 4.
It's almost like he's too big,
here was the thing. I think Mr. Matty Moses, he had Stone Cold and Hulk Hogan. We all three did. I said, I don't care who you are, Hogan and Stone Cold have to be on it.
Absolutely.
There's nobody else. And then I think...
when you look at eras, there's, the Hulk Hogan era, and then it transitions into the Stone Cold era.
Yeah, whether you love those two or whatever their personal stuff is in the past.
They drew.
Those two, if we're talking wrestling, Mount Rushmore.
Right.
There's nobody else. And then I think Mr. Matty, I could be wrong about this, so don't quote me. He then had Vince McMahon and The Rock as the other two.
I don't know if we could say Vince McMahon.
I said Vince doesn't. I said Vince isn't on the statue. He's the sculptor.
Right.
So he's sculpting the statue.
Yeah.
So I thought. So that's why I didn't include him. And then my brother had Vince and Triple H. And that I think
there's arguments for all of them.
There's arguments for everyone. And then mine, for what it's worth, I had obviously Hogan and Stone Cold, and then I put John Cena. I said 15 years on top, nobody's done it, and I'm sorry, he's beat all the records that Stone Cold and Hogan had.
And again, we transitioned from the Stone Cold era into the John Cena era.
And then I don't know if you can guess my fourth. I don't know if you listened to it or not, but I thought then we kind of needed, I went through everyone. Is it Ric Flair? Is it Undertaker? Shawn Michaels, my favorite. Mick Foley, Triple H is an honorable mention. I went through everybody. I excluded this era because, it's just too early to tell.
Right.
Like, you just can't do that.
And this era's been pretty much
garbage. I left out Kane and Big... Wow, okay.
I'm joking.
I left out Kane and Big Show.
Yeah.
I left out all the people. I left out Brock, Randy Orton. All those people were close calls, but nobody. Bret Hart, Batista. You could keep going on. I ended up going with Andre the Giant.
Okay.
Because if we're talking wrestling,
right?
He's larger.
He was
than
huge. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I went with Hogan, Stone Cold, Andre the Giant, and John Cena. I don't know, but Undertaker was my next one, even though I love Shawn Michaels and think he's the best. And then Ric Flair this past week again said Undertaker's on the Mount Rushmore. There's no doubt about it.
I guess the question is what do you base your
Well,
your
I
pick
kind of
on?
argued Mr. Matty Moses included The Rock, and not to shut him down, but I kind of argued that he's kind of more known for not wrestling these days, so he's not on the wrestling.
Right.
If you're doing a Hollywood Mount Rushmore,
and
now he's on it.
And what would put him there would be his feud with Stone Cold.
Right, and everything like that, it would be Stone Cold, and you could even argue his, match against Hogan at WrestleMania. But, if it was 10, 15 years ago, he'd probably be on it. But now, you say Dwayne Johnson, you think Hollywood movie.
Right.
You think $10 million a movie.
And, what I would personally use for the criteria of putting on the Mount Rushmore is who was at the forefront of their era. Like Hulk Hogan, he was the top guy for so many years.
Right.
I would almost actually venture a little further back and maybe put Bruno.
He was another one.
You got Bruno, Hogan, Stone Cold, and then and then Cena. I guess I would almost throw that as my Mount Rushmore because you got Bruno, who spearheaded his era. You got Hogan, who then took it over. And then you got
Stone Cold.
Stone Cold, who, basically took WWE, who was failing and flailing and just floundering, like my triple F's there, and just brought him back. Gave him an edge and gave him something to get behind.
Attitude.
Attitude. And people who weren't even into wrestling. Like at that time, I wasn't a huge wrestling. Like I've always been a fan of wrestling, but there were times where I couldn't watch and I couldn't pay attention. But I knew who Stone Cold was. And as soon as he got big, I was like, you see all these T-shirts and you got people throwing middle fingers in the air and 316 and all this kind of thing. And then you got John Cena, who pretty much did the same thing, except he was more polarizing. Either you loved him or you hated him, but either way, you were watching him.
Yeah, when my sisters were watching.
Right.
And my youngest sister got The Rock's book. And that just speaks volumes. Like they could give two hoots about it, but in 2000, 2001, whatever year we're talking about, they were sitting there watching with us, and she was making The Rock sign and, everything like that. So that would be mine. But, yeah, I'm with you. I think Bruno or Andre. And then at this point, Cena probably has to go on.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just too many years on top, and it's kind of hard to argue. And then,
And for all those saying, like, Taker should be on there, he has an amazing contribution, but he never actually, like, spearheaded his era.
Well, right, yeah. You could always go through it and name, somebody that was higher on the card. And even we also did a top 5 championship matches podcast before that. And my brother specifically mentioned he kept looking for Undertaker championship matches.
Right.
And all of his classics were non-title. He's like, well, The Cell, well, Shawn Michaels, well, all these,
Hogan.
And everything he went through, and he couldn't find like
Tuesday in Texas.
Yeah, he couldn't find that classic championship title match with Undertaker. But the other thing I was going to quick mention was I didn't argue Triple H being on my brothers, but what I just said was, it's too early because in 20 years he may be the new Vince McMahon and lead this into the NXT era, whatever you want to call it,
whatever it's going to be. Yeah,
and then we can discuss him. But in terms of his career so far, I don't think he's
right. And again, he never really spearheaded. He was part of a big era, but at the head of that era was Stone Cold.
Yeah, Stone Cold, Kane, Undertaker, Big Show, Hardys, Edge and Christian.
Mankind,
you can name
Mick Foley.
Exactly. You could list a lot of people, but we kind of got
off.
What
a great era of wrestling that was, right?
Yeah, there was we were off track a little bit here, but there was a SmackDown, I want to say, in like 2000. Like the whole lineup, I think, was like all former Intercontinental or World Champions.
Yeah,
just the whole. Top to bottom. Even
there was a point where you just had huge names that transcended the business. They went on Saturday Night Live. They did all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, even like Kurt Angle and Jericho, those are close calls. Those are
God,
two
I wish
more.
I had a cable back then.
That's pretty funny. But either way, we were talking about Undertaker being back. I'm fine with it. Good for him.
I'm happy Taker's back. It's good to see him do what he does because every now and then you get a little nervous.
Yeah.
Is his body failing him? Is he,
Yeah, and something in my column I wrote about was it's a tag match.
Yeah.
So if things do...
So he can be protected.
He can be protected. If he comes in, hits his big boot, does the old school, and hits a chokeslam, he can tag out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And then everyone will say,
save
wow.
up for the tombstone and let him go.
Yeah, I'm kind of scared about the tombstone on Drew. He's kind of bigger and taller. But I guess we'll see if that actually happens. But, he can do everything. And I guarantee you, I'm making a bet right now after Extreme Rules, everybody's going to say, Undertaker looks great, better than ever.
Right.
Well, when he comes in for 30 seconds and hits a few moves.
He's going to look like $1 million.
It's like when the Shield, Reigns would get tagged in at the end, hit the spear, and everyone would go nuts for him. Well, okay, now let's see. We saw how then he transitioned into 10, 15 minutes, and it's like, oh, it's a little different.
Yeah.
And it's kind of Rowan right now. He can look, towering over Daniel Bryan. Well, put Rowan in a 10, 15-minute match.
And things quickly start to fall apart.
And then we'll see how he does.
Right.
But hopefully Undertaker does great with Roman Reigns, and that does convince him or leave us more for SummerSlam. But before getting to Mr. Kenny Omega, we are going to throw in some cheap little plugs here. Cheap plug time. You are listening to the 411 Foresight Wrestling Podcast. You already know about that. The website, 411mania.com. If you want to subscribe or listen to us, you know where to find us. iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and also YouTube. Let's get those YouTube views up, people. Everything else is doing great, but not so much YouTube. I want those up. Everyone go to YouTube.
Come on, YouTube. Let's do it.
Come on, YouTube. Do it for me. So anyways, that is the 411 Foresight Wrestling Podcast. You already know about that. I am also on Twitter if you want to follow me for whatever reason. At Justin Watry, lots of good stuff there. Mr. Steve, I believe the Resident Complex, is it?
Yes, the Resonant Complex. We have a debut album, North Avenue, that is available everywhere music is sold, all the digital platforms, and there may even be a couple physical copies at cdbaby.com if you want to purchase your own physical copy to hold in the hand. We have liner notes and pictures and stuff like that in there. It actually turns out to be quite a good record. I actually gave it a listen the other day. I listened to it front to back, and I did quite a good job. I'm very proud of that record. So,
little pat on the back.
Yeah, go check it out, and hopefully you all enjoy it.
Absolutely. So we're going to transition from that to something that I did not enjoy. Kenny Omega had an interesting tweet and a little follow-up tweet.
I get the ire because they are trying to do something good, but at the same time, it's wrestling. So, people are going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah, unfortunately, I delete my tweets, so guilty as charged. But it's not because I say anything stupid. I just like deleting stuff. And my buddies and everyone know this. When you send me a text, I instantly delete it. You send me an email, I'll read it and delete it. You send me my Facebook page is pretty much blank. If anything I post, I delete it the next day.
Wow.
It's, pretty much what it is. Unfortunately for Twitter.
You're just a minimalist, aren't you?
I clean everything out. I think my laptop or something, I think it's like I have like 1% used of my gigabytes or whatever it's called. And then even like when I say something, I'm like, I can delete that.
Yeah, I think I have text messages from years ago.
Yeah, Holly, take a shot is kind of the same, and I'm just like, do you need that all on there? And
kinda.
Yeah.
I don't feel like looking them up, and then I got to text them again.
I don't feel like it. But unfortunately for Kenny Omega, screenshots do happen.
Yep.
And
that's the day and age that we're living in.
I'm going to read the first tweet. And the second one, I believe, as of this time, Friday at 7 p.m. I believe the second one's still up. I would not know. But I actually saw this story. I did not actually see it on Twitter, which I guess we can discuss if you want. But anyways, the first one says, if lining your pockets with blood money is okay, then what's wrong with trying to undermine a charity show for victims of gun violence?
Right.
I hear that healthy competition is supposed to be a good thing, and yet I can't help but feel like I'm going to be sick. So here's the quick backstory.
Right.
Obviously, AEW is running a show that night, which had been set. It's for charity, as I said, victims of gun violence.
Fight for the Fallen. Yep.
Yep. So
I think it was in response to the Parkland, Florida school shooting.
Yeah, it was obviously for a good cause, so nothing wrong with that being run. But on that same night, Evolve is having their anniversary show. This was already set, so people wondering about that. It had been set. It's their anniversary, 10 years, so you can't say they planned 10 years ago to steal AEW's thunder.
They might have. That's pretty good planning.
That's pretty much foresight.
Somebody
right
tell me the lottery numbers from that camp, because they obviously have a future insight.
That would take a lot of foresight. So I'm going to say that there was no issue there. Now, here's where the problem comes in. It was then announced WWE Network is going to be streaming the Evolve. Yeah, they're going to be airing it. And, of course, right away it becomes, here comes the response to Cody ripping on the throne, Triple H. And
it's kind of hard to ignore the coincidence, I guess, quote-unquote. I'm not sure if I really believe in coincidences.
Oh.
But, they didn't have to stream it, like it is not a WWE promotion. Yeah, they know Gabe Sapolsky and they're good friends with him and they're helping him out. And that's where Drew McIntyre and Gargano came from. But on the same day, it's got to, I can't say exactly what's going on, but you got to admit, it's got a little bit of an odd, like, are you really?
It raises an eyebrow or two.
Kind of like the whole WWE invading WCW. Like, are you really going to do this? Like, are you sure?
I'm going to quick read the follow-up tweet because Kenny Omega...
He did delete it.
He deleted it.
Posted something a little more nice.
A little bit. He said... I've said my piece, and it opened the door to a very toxic environment. In other words, he was getting ripped for it and didn't like it. That's the way I translated it. It wasn't a message to fans or the boys, just the decision makers.
Right.
And I agree with that. He wasn't ripping the fans or his fellow guys. Right. Of course not. I wish everyone wrestling on any show that day all the best. That is all. Well, he clearly didn't mean the best to everyone on the show.
Right,
so,
right.
Here is where I may convince you is a coincidence.
Okay.
So you can look back and just type it into Google. You will find headlines from the past year of Vince McMahon going back and forth on airing other promotions on the network.
Right, I've read that, yeah.
Okay.
There was the tier levels, there was this, that, the other thing.
It's gone back and forth.
Yeah.
And I forgot the name, so go ahead and complain if you want. I forgot the name of the UK company they're working with. Is it
ICW?
I was going to say ICW.
That's where Balor came from.
I didn't want to say it and be wrong, though.
I mean, I know they've done stuff with ICW in the past, so if that's the one...
I think Drew also just did something. He did a signing or he made a special
appearance.
And
when Balor was injured not too long ago, he made a walkout and
Yes, he did. He made a big appearance because I think Mick Foley had to cancel.
I've seen little video blips of that promotion, and it looks like their ring is incredibly small.
It seems like the crowd is nuts.
Yeah, the crowd is nuts, and the ring is tiny.
Yeah, a lot. I think almost every promotion is a smaller ring than 20 by 20.
Okay.
So, because it's the smaller space.
I suppose. But I just wonder how they work in such a small space.
But here's where the coincidence, I probably won't convince you, but I may if anyone's listening. They've been going back and forth for a long time. And there was even the last there was the conference call.
Conference call, right.
And this time there was a strong tease it was coming in a few months.
Yeah.
And this was before AEW.
Okay.
And what better show to do it than the 10th anniversary of Evolve? So, it does seem like, oh, crap, they're just doing it for AEW. But the crew's in town for Philly. The show's in Philly. The next night is Extreme Rules. Everyone's going to be in town that weekend. And they've been talking about this forever. So I'm sure at some point Vince just said, do the 10th anniversary Evolve show.
Okay, what was the straw that broke his back, though? You know
That's
what I'm saying?
Thing. When was this?
Hey, AEW's doing a show. We've been talking about doing this.
Yeah.
Let's do it. See what happens.
So that's where the cause and effect.
Yeah.
Were they already thinking about it?
Former band.
Indeed. So was that, like you said, the straw? Was there, was he thinking about it, or was it set, finale, in print, signing that it was going to happen, or was it 99% sure, and then AEW, and then they said, absolutely, now we're doing it.
Right. That's kind of where I go. Like, they've been talking about it, Heyman and Han. We know they've been talking about it or thinking about it or introducing. They've talked about tiers. They've talked about which promotions would be airing. They've even talked about airing Impact stuff on the network.
God. Yeah, that is true.
It's crazy. But, I mean, so we knew that this was in his brain and roaming around there.
Yeah.
Now, when did they announce? Because if they had announced this prior to even Fight for the Fallen. It could have been after AEW, but they were doing Fight for the Fallen.
And wasn't didn't AEW then after that announcement announce that Jericho would be on it?
Yes, that's where I'm. This is where I'm going. Is that
did Jericho say I'm in? Text
well, we know that Jericho is AEW. He is taking that company. He's going to do everything he can for him.
He's all in.
So, it's just a question of the timing of the announcement almost makes it is what gives it that feeling. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so they're doing this thing and we've been thinking about doing it, but now since they are doing it, we're definitely going to do it. And then AEW is like, well, screw you. We're going to bring in your biggest fanboy that came over to our side.
Fanboy?
I know, poor choice of words. It was the first word that popped in my head. Your biggest commodity that you once had.
Headline, whatever.
Yeah,
and I would not be shocked whatsoever. It was actually Jericho who saw that news.
Right, and asked to be a part of it. Hey, I'll help you out.
Send out the tweet. I'm going to be there now.
Yeah.
If he wasn't already, maybe as a surprise or whatever. But
Yeah, that could have been they were going to have a surprise, and now they decided to air a show on the same day. So Chris Jericho's like, screw the surprise. Let's just go all out.
Yeah, let's just do it. Wow.
Wow. I can do it too.
We can do it all here. But anyways, back to the tweet. Here's the part where I believe he may have stuck his foot in his mouth. And unfortunately, this was a bad tweet. Again, I didn't see it on Twitter. I saw the headline. But the part about lining your pockets with blood money.
That's Saudi Arabia.
Clearly a shot at Saudi Arabia. And I'm just going to guess here that a few of the comments mention Mr. Tony Khan's father. And I don't know if you know this or anybody else, but Mr. Tony Khan and his father, I can't remember his first name, so sorry about that. I believe he just bought a hotel from the Saudi Arabia prince. So it's very interesting how Kenny Omega loves to, point fingers, but not
look at his own company.
Not that the Khans do business with the exact same, Yeah,
so
that's it. Little hypocrisy. So maybe
that is a little foot and mouth, isn't it?
Maybe a few people pointed that out, Mr. Blood Money. And he also had a few other things, which I was going to bring up, but now thinking I shouldn't. But another thing that
I guess it could be, if you want to dig deep into something like that, is did he buy the hotel from the Saudi royal family or just a businessman in Saudi Arabia? Because
no, I think it's the royal family.
WWE's contract is with the royal family.
Yeah,
they were the ones that brought him in.
He's one of the investors in it.
Right.
Again,
and
I don't know the name.
Because it is the Saudi government or royal family or whatever that is accused of doing this murder, whatever it was, and maybe Tony Khan's father bought a hotel from just a Saudi businessman that had no thing in that. I mean, it depends on where everything's coming from, but still, it was a foot and mouth tweet and probably should not have been said.
Probably not. Honestly, not good, and I didn't think did him or AEW even any favors.
Right.
And
almost kind of makes him look a little petty.
Extremely petty, I thought. And there was another thing which I just kind of forgot in my head. But, yes, I know I remembered. Kenny Omega, who later said, I wish everybody that well who's wrestling that day. Well, clearly he didn't. So he also, I believe, when Roman Reigns came back and announced he was in remission,
right?
I believe in the opening he told his Twitter followers to turn it off and watch him play video games on a stream. Again, just messing, and obviously, it's obviously a joke, but,
right.
Some people can say, well, I thought we were all brothers and all, in this together.
Yeah.
And, and again, that was before AEW even had shows and stuff. It was earlier this year. So, again, little things like that. And like I said, I was going to mention something else, but I'm not going to.
So let's envision something with me, if you will.
All right, let's envision.
What if everything goes down? They announce Fight for the Fallen. And then WWE announces they're doing the Evolve show. Now let's take the Kenny Omega thing out. Let's say that never happened. And then Chris Jericho says he's going to be at Fight for the Fallen.
Now it gets interesting.
Now how do we look at this event?
It looks interesting, and it certainly, again, going back to a year or whatever when they've been kind of going back and forth with this Evolve thing. But, you also have to remember, I mean, it's Evolve. You know who's on the show? Drew Gulak? I mean, they're not exactly throwing their heavy hitters. Right. Let's be honest here.
It's interesting, though, because if you take the Kenny Omega thing out, it just looks like good marketing. You know what I mean? Like it actually looks competition, healthy competition, support for everybody. You take the Kenny Omega thing out, you put that in there, it almost makes them look like children, or juvenile, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, maybe like a bunch of young
We
punks
can find that later.
Right, I dropped my cap. So I was going to say, I was just going to say, it's funny how when Cody's ripping on the throne and doing all these things and, then it's great.
Right.
But, look, now there's a response, and suddenly we're going to cry on Twitter about it.
Well, and I don't think it was really the response or the fact that there was a response. I think it was the content of the response. When you start getting petty and talk about blood money and this, that, and the other thing, that starts to put you into that, like, juvenile category.
Even ignoring the con thing. Here's kind of where my bottom line is. You want competition with WWE?
Right. Yeah, exactly. They were talking about going full on war.
You're poking the bear.
Then when the bear bites,
the bear's going to wake up.
Don't be surprised.
The Bears going to wake up, and guess what? Now you're going against Evolve, and I've already seen it said that I'm going to assume they're going on Wednesday nights with their show at this point, because Tuesday's NBA on TNT.
Here's a little Native American proverb. This lady finds a snake that is wounded and is, probably on the brink of death. So brings this snake into her house and nurses it back to health. When the snake gets back to health, it bites her. And as the lady is laying there dying, she says to the snake, I did all this stuff for you. Why did you bite me? And the snake looks at her and goes, you knew I was a snake. And that's it. So you poke the snake, snake's gonna bite.
Wow.
And even if AEW has helped WWE to kind of get their creative juices flowing and start, pushing the envelope, they're gonna bite back. It's just gonna happen.
They're gonna bite back. Even if it was, even if it is quote unquote just an Evolve show, which again isn't nothing major or anything for them. But I was saying that they were gonna do a Wednesday night. I assume at this point it'll be Wednesday night for AEW.
Okay.
I've already seen it that NXT would go live.
Ooh.
And maybe even go to FS1. And again, you want competition. Why not the next takeover instead of the Saturday? Make it in its normal slot Wednesday and have it the premiere the night that they're premiering on TNT.
Right. And, how...
Are they going to cry on Twitter about that too and say, oh, what competition?
Right. Well, how, when WWE decides to turn it on, how crazy are they going to get? I mean, if they're going to start airing their best stuff in direct competition with AEW, it's going to be an interesting time to be a wrestling fan.
Yeah, and you can say, well, they have
my DVR is going to go nuts.
Overdrive. You can say, well, Tony Khan, billionaire. They have a billionaire. Well, they do, but they have not the 40, 50-year experience billionaire.
Right, and they don't have a board of directors. They don't have, I mean, there is so much behind WWE that if they get provoked.
Yeah, and not a, TV company that's
Do you remember Grenada in the 80s? The war that lasted like 11 hours?
No, actually I don't. But I was going to say, they don't have TNT footing their bill that can cut that cord at any time and say, pay your own bill. So, no, I don't know. Is this a story?
Oh, Grenada was a war, and basically WWE, the United States went in there and it was over in 11 hours. Like,
wow.
Yeah, because basically, you don't remember Family Guy. You in what army? The United States Army. Oh, that's a good army.
I actually do not watch Family Guy. Of course.
This was an old, and next time.
You should have known that was coming.
I'll have to play some videos.
All right. Well, that's kind of the bottom line. Do you have any other thoughts on the Kenny Omega or the Evolve situation?
No. I mean, like we said, it's competition, foot and mouth,
Yeah, and honestly, if you don't even think that, I think he regretted tweeting it. The fact he deleted it
shows that he did regret it.
He did it and kind of hinted at it by saying it opened up a toxic environment.
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah. So, anyways,
you kind of did it to yourself. I mean, I love Kenny Omega. Don't get me wrong. He's one of my favorite wrestlers whenever I can watch him. But, yeah, you kind of screwed up there, buddy.
He kind of screwed up, and I wasn't going to bring this up, but have you been following the Seth Rollins drama on Twitter?
I have been, but now I can't for the life remember who it was with.
Well, no, it was with everyone. Before Stomping Grounds, he just said there was a tweet by WWE that
best
said,
wrestling ever, period.
The WWE tweeted out, tune into Stomping Grounds tonight. And then he just said, the best whatever it was. And then Roman Reigns, did an exclamation point.
Yeah.
And then, of course, here came, Will Ospreay and, Jericho laughed it off and all these things. Yeah. And then Rollins said, well, we have a better one of you in Ricochet. And he kept going on, and basically he's done a few interviews by basically saying, I'm sick and tired of sitting around and reading tweets and people bashing us. I love this. I've done it my whole life. And, it's kind of fitting that, this all happened because this was kind of what my column was last week.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes hand in hand of like, hey, I listed 50 things that we love about the company without even like thinking about it. And here's Rollins saying, like, I dedicated my life to this, and I'm the champion, and now everyone's just been taking a dump all over everything.
Right. And it's kind of nice that he's talking about his fellow wrestlers, too. He's not focusing on what he does. We got Ricochet, we got Samoa Joe, we got this.
Yeah, I thought it was great putting Ricochet in that class and putting him over. And then even when he won the title, I didn't necessarily agree with him losing the AJ Styles clean the next night, whatever sense that made. But we'll see where that goes. But I thought the tweets were fine, and you know what? If he's kind of getting sick of it.
That was a killer match, though.
It was great. Can definitely do more, I guess.
I'm glad you convinced me to watch the last hour.
Hey, EC3 won a title, so I'm happy. So I'm gonna,
keep it
for 30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm gonna kind of side with Rollins again. You know what? Sometimes you can kind of, like WWE, kind of bite back a little bit.
Right.
So he can sit there and read these tweets, and I guess the word is trolls, and sit there and say these things about Becky is the real man and all this stuff.
You know, if you're passionate about the company you work for, you have every right to defend it. If somebody came up to my job and started trashing my company, you bet your butt I'm gonna defend us.
Yeah, and he even said, I'm not speaking for everybody, but I kind of hope I am in the back.
Right.
Like if you're not, then like what are you doing?
And like, this is me, but this is what I feel about, the place that I work, the place that I make my living.
Yeah, so I'm kind of glad that happened. Kind of the opposite of Kenny Omega, where that just came off bad. I thought Rollins, kind of was making some.
Rollins was sensible. He didn't use any like controversial or like tainted topics.
It feels like he's done it before, where Omega and honestly some other AEW stuff just, I don't know, they're just.
And of course, we all know Seth Rollins has made mistakes on Twitter in the past.
He sent a few pictures.
He's learned.
Or girl pictures, or
right.
Whoever had those
Somebody
pictures.
sent pictures, Nazis and stuff.
Somebody did. But anyways, three weeks after that controversy, he won the title in the main event of WrestleMania.
How about that?
The company didn't care.
Right.
So we're going to move on to the last topic, which kind of goes back with this whole fighting back type thing. Big news the other day, WWE.
Oh, we're going in. We're going all in, folks.
I don't even know where to start with this, but let's just kind of lay it out in case you've been living under a rock. This is legit, folks.
Don't talk about my rock.
Talk about my rock like that. This is legit, folks. Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff are coming into the company.
They're coming back. I'm back.
Better than ever, hopefully, because legit backstage are going to have roles that, are gonna
that, as of we know right now, are not on screen. So it's all a creative executive type role. It's an actual decision making type role. Yes, they're going to be reporting to Vince McMahon, but it seems like they're going to be more focusing on putting out the best product as opposed to portraying a story.
Yeah, this is not a storyline or anything. Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff, I'm sure everybody from the 90s knows those two. They're going to be working next to Vince McMahon. I mean, they've been in the company before, so This is like nothing new.
So they know him.
But now they will actually have power.
Right.
Bischoff was adamant when he came in 2002 to be the Raw GM that he did not want any power. He didn't want the pressure, the stress. Yep. He wanted to show up Monday, say, "What am I doing?"
Yep.
I'll go out and do it.
He wanted to be on-screen talent.
On-screen only.
I think they've honestly tapped into something that's going to be very beneficial to him, because you got Bischoff, who is really good with promoting television shows, really good with promotions and marketing, and he's going to be dealing one-on-one with the Fox guys when SmackDown moves over, and then he gets to report to Vince McMahon. So you got that Bischoff insight that could only be good if they keep him free.
Yeah, that almost is one of the reasons why, because right away I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, Bischoff ran Raw years ago and Heyman ran SmackDown. Why is it now? Why is Heyman running Raw? But then I remembered Bischoff has the TV.
Right.
He has the connections.
He had a whole company where he was basically selling TV shows.
He has the TV connections. So with SmackDown going to Fox in a few months, now in my head I'm thinking, okay, that's why Bischoff is lined up on the
they have to show something, because at any moment Fox could be like,
Yeah, there was a story that Fox did not know about this. And when they did, they actually wanted Heyman and not...
Oh, really?
But that seems like a little far-fetched. Consider the source on that one. But anyways, either way, big news. My main takeaway right away was that each is going to be separate on the shows.
Right.
So Bischoff has talked about this before, and I think we all have. The shows need to feel different.
Yeah.
Or else we're basically watching 5 hours of a long TV show.
Right.
Raw needs to be Raw. SmackDown needs to be SmackDown. But then that goes back to the wild card rule.
Yeah, exactly.
They need to be separate. They need to be completely different.
Right, and I think that at this point it's time to abandon the wild card rule. And like we were talking earlier, I don't know I can't remember if it was on air or off air, but Raw, close the doors, everybody's in Raw, stays on Raw. SmackDown, close the doors. Everybody on SmackDown's on SmackDown. Each champion, each show, each tag champion, da-da-da.
Yeah, and when they originally did this in 2002, I thought it was because Triple H kind of had his stuff going on Raw.
Right, and then Brock Lesnar refused to fight Triple H for the Undisputed title, so then they bring back the World Heavyweight title, and then both shows, are doing really well.
Yeah, so on Raw, you had the Triple H show kind of with Evolution, and then Scott Steiner, Kevin Nash, Shawn Michaels, and that whole show.
Scott Steiner.
But then you flip over to SmackDown, and what do you see? You see, younger, you see Eddie Guerrero,
right.
You see Chavo, you see Kurt Angle, and you see these guys like Edge and Rey Mysterio,
right?
And then Brock Lesnar. You see these great matches, two completely different products,
right?
And sometimes people forget this, but Paul Heyman was writing that show at the time, 2002 to 2003.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And, this is a little historical thing, but I believe it was for, I want to say 6 or 9 months, SmackDown beat Raw in the ratings.
Ooh.
A lot of people don't remember that. SmackDown overtook Raw.
What night were they on at this time? Was it Thursday?
I think it was Thursday, still on UPN.
Okay.
I'm not for sure about that.
But it was the UPN era.
It was 2002 to 2003. And then Brock, Edge, Kurt Angle, Rey Mysterio. You can go right down the list. And this was when Stephanie was...
when she was in charge, the Alliance and stuff.
And that's kind of when people kind of did start the Triple H fatigue and just kind of like, oh, here we go again.
Right.
And then the rating showed it.
Yep.
And then, of course, Vince kind of got his hands on SmackDown with the Hogan feud and then the Zach Gowen thing.
Right.
And then not Triple H, and then Stephanie and Vince had a match.
Yeah.
And then ratings started to go back to Raw.
Right, exactly.
So once the McMahon thing started overtaking it, and then I think
so
even
what
Roddy...
does that teach us? When McMahon puts his hands on things...
Well, even then Roddy Piper showed up. If you remember, Sable returned.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So things kind of did fall apart at that. Mr. America showed up. If you remember that.
I am not Hulk Hogan.
He passed the lie detector test. And I mean, Big Show got a main event run in 2003 at that point when he tossed Mysterio on the stretcher board.
Oh, I remember that.
And then Big Show and Lesnar broke the ring.
Yep.
Either way, back to what we were talking about, SmackDown does have that potential to beat Raw. And they did it at the end of 2016. An episode of SmackDown beat Raw in the ratings. And that was something that Cena said when he originally was sent there in the draft in summer 2016, that was something the entire brand, that was kind of one of their goals when Daniel Bryan and Shane were running it.
Right.
It feels like forever ago.
Yeah.
They wanted to beat Raw when it did feel legit, when they had Bliss and Becky, and, it
seemed like there was some serious competition, yeah.
And they did beat Raw in the ratings. I think it was just once, but still, they did it.
They did it. They can say they did it.
I think the main event was Cena. I think it was Ellsworth and AJ Styles for the title or something with Cena. Cena returned, or I don't know. Either way, they did it. So back to what we were talking about. I think Heyman on Raw makes more sense, obviously, for Brock and Ronda, them. And like you said, the Bischoff thing with SmackDown, I would say, see, I mentioned this off air, but this feels like big news, but big news that may end up meaning nothing because Vince McMahon is obviously still the head honcho.
Right.
And we saw, Sanjay Dutt. We have seen Shane Helms. We've seen Jeff Jarrett. We've seen Abyss. We've seen Jeremy Borash. We've seen even Bruce Pritchard come into the company. But, it's still Vince. So they could bring in, they could bring in
anybody. And
they could hire all of ROH right now, backstage crew. They could hire all of the Impact crew. They could hire everyone in AEW. But if it's still the Vince show.
Right.
It's still the Vince show, then it's still the Vince show. And this is kind of a small little thing to look for in the future, so nothing really to talk about now. But is this move being done because Vince in 6 months will focus on an XFL?
That was one of my first thoughts. My very first thought was thinking of the rocky past that Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff have had when they were employed by WWE before.
Keep them separate.
Well, keep them separate.
You do Monday, you do Tuesday.
Right, but what I'm saying is like those two have had rocky relationships with Vince and the brass of WWE. So now that they're being brought back in, is WWE like really nervous? Are they really desperate? Are they scared?
They're hiring up anyone that has an idea.
Right, exactly. And people that have, made a big name for them in the past, they're like, hey, come on, do it again. So are they like trying to rehash, their former glory?
Yeah, they say like if you ever get uncomfortable, you go to what's comfortable.
Right.
And Bischoff and Heyman
it seems like he's backtracking.
Have done it in the 90s, so you go back to what worked.
Right.
And, it may not, I think it was Tyler Breeze who tweeted something like, after the news was released, it was a cryptic tweet, so you can say, well, he didn't mean it that way, but, it certainly seemed that way. It was something like, I like looking towards the future, not the past.
Yeah, I did see that.
And, it does feel like, oh my gosh, Bischoff and Heyman, they're what, 40, 50, 60, however old.
Yeah.
But, Heyman seems to have somewhat of a grasp on today's day and age, and he's a big internet guy.
Right.
And, well, I was going to say something, I won't say it, but he's also something else. So, so he's,
sorry.
He seems to be in tune more with everybody, but I will say a quick little kind of tidbit. So maybe if it's for XFL, they're kind of setting up guys that know what they're doing.
It kind of seems like he's might be taking some time off to go deal with that. And then who would you put in charge other than Triple H, obviously? But
yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it was Ed Koskey the other week when they were gone was in
yeah,
charge.
That's right.
And then I
guess there was nobody there.
Yeah, exactly. If he's in charge, I don't know about the Shane or Triple H side of this story. That's a little interesting.
Yeah, right.
Could Bruce Pritchard do it? I know he did it in the 90s, so I'm sure he could step in and obviously know what to do.
I mean, they had to have run it by Triple H. I mean, he's not going to be left out of the loop on stuff like
I'm
this.
going to go with the side that he probably just didn't want the pressure, honestly. Right. He's got NXT and everything else going on. And, want to run Raw and Smackdown too? I mean, he will one day.
Right, yeah.
But
maybe he's just waiting his turn.
I would say he's waiting his turn. I think he might know that this thing's going to blow up in a month.
That could be too, He's just got the unique foresight to be like,
Did you say Foresight?
Oh.
The 411 Foresight. I'm going to say also that if you remember, Vince Russo returned to WWE in 2002.
I'm sorry. Every time we say his name, I have to laugh.
I actually tend to not ever say his name, but it fits in this story. He came back in 2000.
Bro.
I don't listen to him, and he's one of many who actually have blocked me on Twitter for what it's worth. And yeah,
he doesn't even know I exist, so I don't got to worry about it.
Yeah, notice how I said I didn't read the Kenny Omega tweet on Twitter. I saw the headline, but anyways, that's a little history there. But anyways,
boy, you just rub people the wrong way.
I don't rub anybody. The thing with I was going to say
that's
about
not what I heard.
Oh boy. I was going to say, back on track, I was going to say Vince Russo came back in WWE in summer 2002 to join the writing team because that's when the brand, everything was going on. And they were looking for ideas. They were trying to figure out how do we now do this Raw and SmackDown separate rosters. So they brought in Vince Russo. And do you want to know how long it lasted?
I want to say 2 hours.
Actually, it lasted a week.
Oh, 1 week.
And he was shown the door and has not been back since. But it actually pretty much did last 2 hours because what ended up happening was he went to a creative meeting. And again, he was pretty much given full reign. But it was like, no, we work with a team now. It's not just you writing the shows. And he pretty much laid out the next few months of stories.
Right.
And fortunately for everybody else...
How many things on a poll were discussed?
Well, not a whole lot. But here's the thing. When he laid out everything, pretty much he outright admitted that, he didn't watch the shows.
Right.
So one of his first ideas was a quote-unquote brand new, never-before-seen Triple H Jericho feud. Okay. Doesn't seem too bad.
Right.
Except if you remember the timeline, summer 2002... They just main evented WrestleMania and had a Cell rematch at Judgment Day. And within 2 hours after everything was laid out, pretty much everybody called Vince separately and was like, dude, this ain't going to work. And Russo was showing the door. So that's kind of what I don't know. I don't want to say it's going to happen, but this whole thing kind of feels like this might end badly or... in a week, Vince is going to overrule one of them. It's like, well,
and then they're going to walk out or whatever.
And it's going to be like, well, why are they here besides probably a big fat paycheck? I'm guessing they both got convinced big. I think they're still doing their podcasts. So I think, that's probably, well, not Heyman, but I mean, Bischoff is still doing the podcast. Yeah. But I mean, if Vince is just going to call the shots anyways, are they just idea guys?
Or are they liaisons between Vince and everybody else? Like Vince is just tired of it. He's just tired of dealing.
But if that's the case, then why are we paying another, probably I'm guessing high six figures to just be a liaison?
Because they can.
Because they can, and they have $2 billion TV deals and Saudi money coming in. But anyways, the thing with Heyman, that wasn't even news to me. He's pretty much been there every week on Raw.
Right.
If you're ever wondering why he's been backstage when Brock's not there, well, it's because he's already there.
Right.
While they
he's
show
doing
him
stuff.
Yeah, they've kind of showed him the past few weeks standing in the back, just staring whenever Rollins would be on TV, like just staring in the background and then like giving a 2-minute promo.
And then insider info, he's been working with Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch and a bunch of other wrestlers to try and help him.
He's already been there, and anybody that's been coming to him for help, he's given help. So him being there to me isn't even a story. Honestly, I don't mean to downplay it, but that's not even the story.
Right.
Story to me is Bischoff.
Yeah.
Especially the SmackDown side with the Fox. That's the story to me.
Right, exactly. I mean, they obviously are tapping into his TV experience to try and
then
sell
even
the
a few
show.
months ago, Bruce Pritchard, it just feels like they're kind of not going back in time, but they're going to anybody who has any part of success of any era.
Right, exactly. They're going back to anything that once worked because things aren't working now, and they want to figure out why.
They want to figure out why, and I sent a few tweets about this. Somebody asked me on Twitter, when's the column coming about and consider this the column, this podcast right now. Consider this my written word, but I'm going to kind of take a wait and see thing on this. This could blow up in a bad way.
It could go really well, too.
Or this could be just, Vince kind of gobbling up everybody to keep under his roster, obviously, before All Elite. Because maybe they were going to...
I didn't even think about that.
Because maybe they were going to go to Bischoff for the TNT connection.
Right? Think about Bischoff on AEW, what he would do.
So, again, is this a response, or is this just like he's been doing with Abyss and Jeff Jarrett and Bruce Pritchard, just bringing in anybody for anything? And I like that they're doing something.
Yeah.
I like that even a few months ago, it's kind of turned into a punchline now, but I liked how after the Baron Corbin thing, the McMahons came out and said, we need change. Right. And even Rollins came out and kind of ripped on the show and was just... I know
they can say that all they want, but they haven't really changed.
It's silly now to look at it, and then with Shane McMahon on the TV. And
right, I laugh because Vince McMahon specifically said, no more overbearing authority figures. And then 1 week, 2 weeks later, overbearing authority figures.
Yeah, best in the world, Shane McMahon.
Oh, it was, and it was also Vince and the Daniel Bryan thing.
And Triple H, I think it was Triple H. I could be wrong, but when they were all standing out there, pointed and said, "You are the authority now."
Right.
And it was, obviously didn't last, but they responded.
Yeah.
So they came out and said, "Look, this is what's going on, and things are changing." And I think they called up. That was the night all those NXT promos aired.
Right, with Ricochet and Alistair.
For what's his face, Lars, Lacey,
that's right,
Nikki Cross, EC3, and Heavy Machinery.
Yep,
those were the ones, and then they came out, and then like you said, Black came up, even Gargano and Ciampa, obviously, injury,
disappeared for a moment,
and then Ricochet now. So they did respond. So regardless of why Bischoff and Heyman are brought in, it's telling me they know,
right?
Okay, we need to do something.
Yeah.
So
isn't it interesting that out of the 4 that debuted that night, only 1 is still active?
Yeah, hey, Aleister Black got a knock on his door. Somebody answered.
Right. Well, I'm just saying,
but I don't know
who.
We
haven't seen him for a while.
I mean, the rumor's been Randy Orton.
No, that's...
I mean, somebody reported it's Cesaro. This was a legit place said it's Cesaro. Don't ask me how or why or wild card rule or what, but...
I guess we'll find out at some point.
I guess this is the source we're going with these days.
Yeah.
Somebody said Cesaro, so now watch it be Cesaro.
Right? I mean...
As I make fun of it.
Yeah.
But either way, it tells me...
It'd be a great match.
Oh, absolutely it would be, with Black kicking his head off at the end.
I could watch a Cesaro match all day long.
Hey, maybe that will be Heyman. He's a Heyman guy, remember?
He was.
Yeah, well, probably still is.
Is it once a Heyman guy, always a Heyman guy?
I think so, unless you're Curtis Axel.
I mean, Medusa / Alundra Blaze. She still claims she's the first Heyman girl.
I'm going to like my Curtis Axel joke there. But anyways, it just tells me that they're doing something. They know, obviously, they needed to do something, so they're doing whatever. I know it's Heyman and it's Bischoff and... not to downplay it, but it's a reaction.
Right.
And right now I'm going to take it. I'm going to accept it and say, okay.
Let's see what happens.
They know what's happening, and if this blows up in their face in a month or in a week,
it comes down. It comes down to that old JR adage: maximize your minutes. If the